So Matty K has, by his own admission, a funky question. So here we go. So he says, funky question, so stick with me. Is there a scenario where Notre Dame, say, decides on Coan as a starter, but the offense includes packages for Buchner, kind of like what Georgia did with Justin Fields? That's what JF stands for.
I would hope so.
I think that would be ideal, to be honest with you. I love that potential scenario. I think Coan is you would be fine with him as your starter. I've seen enough film of him. If he's healthy, obviously, that's the big if, but I think he is. I think having him as a starter is fine, but you need to work in Buchner or whoever your number 2 is, whoever that ends up being. You need to work them in. You need to get them in for quality reps, and whether that's a package situation like they did with Ian Book when he was, he did the, he was the red zone guy who handed off a bunch, which was glorious. So whether it's a package thing or whether it's a drive thing or whatever the case may be, he needs to be in there when the game is still a game. And however they do that, it needs to happen. I think that would be the ideal scenario for Notre Dame in 21.
Yeah, I don't know if I want him focusing on running as much, maybe as Georgia did with Justin Fields.
Sure, I get that.
Where that's kind of what he was. I mean, when he came in some of those games, he was just kind of a runner. I don't know if Matty is necessarily asking specifically for the same type that Georgia ran, but just more of a, hey, they get him in on a series here and there as sort of a change of pace. I think it makes a lot of sense because here's the other thing. If Tyler Buchner is as good as we think he is, I mean, he's a talented kid, but you have to prepare for him a lot differently than you did a Justin Fields package in 2018 or even a Tim Tebow package, with Florida back in 2006 when Chris Leak was a starter and they brought him in. You kind of knew what Tim Tebow was going to do. I think with Tyler Buchner, you can have enough of a 5 or 6 pass concepts, run some RPOs and some read zones where you got to worry about him throwing the football too. And it has nothing to do with Jack Coan. Why I believe this. It's just that's how good Tyler Buchner I believe him to be. I also don't think because of his circumstances, which were out of his control, he couldn't control a knee injury in the opener of 2018, just like he couldn't control the decision not to play high school football in the state of California this year. So it's not like anything he's done, but the circumstances are that he just hasn't played a lot of football. Yeah. So I don't necessarily want him being the starter unless he's just far more advanced than I would anticipate having played so little. I just think an idea of working him into games and allowing him an opportunity to develop as a player while also saying Jack Coan's our guy. Jack's the guy. Now, if Tyler Buchner gets out there and he's just just crushing teams, then you play him more. Absolutely. You always play the best guy. If Trevor Lawrence part of the reason Trevor Lawrence got the start against Syracuse in 2018 was because when he got in the game, he played really well. Yeah. When he got in against Texas A&M in the first game of his career, Kelly Bryant was a starter. But Trevor got in, threw some ball, and he had some great throws, So, eventually it was just kind of like, it's so obvious that this guy's better than Kelly Bryant, and it's time to make that move. If that happens, then great. But it doesn't have to happen, If it's a package you take throughout the season, then I'm all for that. But I also think that it's one of those things where, if Jack Coan is your guy, then maybe there are some games where you don't use Tyler Buchner in that package. Maybe if you're getting ready to go play – a team where it's like, hey, look, this is going to be a battle and we need to make sure or Jack Coan comes out and he's just smoking, maybe you don't utilize that as much.
Sure.
Except maybe in red zone or short yardage. So there's all types of things they could do. The point being, though, Maddie, is I think Notre Dame needs to do what you're asking, which is they need to find a way. Unless he's just emotionally and mentally not ready to step on the field, there's always that. But I don't think that's going to be Tyler. Anyone that knows Tyler Buchner at all is not going to be worried about his mental preparedness for this stage. I don't think that's going to affect him at all, especially with him being an early enrollee. He's going to have all spring to work out any kinks that he might need. I think by the time we get to the fall, it's going to be very hard to justify him not playing in situations that aren't mop-up minutes. And I would say that's true even if Drew Pyne beats out Jack Coan. I don't care who the quarterback is.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Yes, I agree.
Tyler Buchner's too talented. And it's the same thing that that was said in 2018. If you want to keep Ian Book as your starter, fine. But if you're not finding a role for number 15, I'm sorry, that kid's too talented not to find a role for.
There's a reason he's in another uniform now.
Yeah. Well, it's a lot more complicated than that. But like
I know, but that's part of it.
If you would have used him, I don't know if he would have. He didn't leave because he wasn't used, but had you used him, he wouldn't have left.
There you go. That's the point I'm making.
Right.
Yes, thank you.
Right.
All right.